You're listening to Keeping It Real with Janine, your guide to living an authentic, healthy life. A podcast about living with more joy, energy, and flow. We strive to help you create a healthier life from a wide variety of perspectives. No matter how well we take care of ourselves, we can always do better. We want you to glean some useful nuggets from each episode to help you be more in the flow with ease, joy, and purpose. So if you feel your life could be more fulfilling, healthy, and joyful, you're in the right place.
Troy Corbin is truly an amazing, knowledgeable, and talented man. He has created a gardener's paradise on only a third of an acre. And that includes the home he shares with his wife Danielle and their son. And it even has a lawn. As a boy, Troy showed a keen interest in his mother's garden on the island of Trinidad. A love that has stayed with him even after moving to the cold climate of Canada. Troy shares with us his journey and his secrets for a healthy, productive garden full of fruits and vegetables that you can be proud of. Part of the secret? Taking your time to plan well. Before we get into my time with Troy, just let me say this was my very first interview, and most of it is outside. So my apologies for the inconsistencies in the recording. Hopefully you'll enjoy it anyway. I've also posted garden pics on realjanine.com. You might even want to follow along with the audio. Just click on podcast episode 5 and they'll be there. Okay, we're going to start first with a chat inside, and then we're going to go outside and take a tour.
Okay, so it all started for me as, a little boy growing up on the island of Trinidad in the Caribbean. It's a twin island, so Trinidad and Tobago is actually the country. And it's just off the coast of Venezuela, just on the east of Venezuela, just only 8 miles. So it's the last Caribbean island in the chain if anyone's checking on a map or anything. But as a little boy growing up, I always watched my mom gardening. It always amazed me that she would put something in the ground and then nurture that thing, and then later on, we'd get food from it, and I always thought, wow, this is a miracle, right?
It's pretty magical.
It is magical, right? Mm-hmm. And if you take care of it rightly and responsibly, then it gives something back to you. And that meant a lot to me, because it's in my nature to actually, foster growth and stuff in plants and people and stuff like that. So back then, I watched my mom time after time, and she'd put something in the ground. She would plant tomatoes and root vegetables as well, which you don't have in Canada. Like, for instance, there's something called cassava. It's called yucca here. One of the things that we used a lot. But yeah, things like corn and peppers and all this sorts of stuff. And one day I said to her, can I plant one? And she said, well, of course, right? So the first thing I wanted to plant was a corn seed. I love boiled corn. Mm-hmm. It's my favorite. So yeah, I planted my first plant, and it grew. And of course, I got something from it when I took care of it, because she had said, okay, well, you plant it, you've got to water it and stuff like that. Before I knew it, I was in the garden, and I was planting and digging and all this sorts of stuff and gardening myself. And I got joy from that. And to me, it's important to not only put your hands to work, but get a reward. After you put your hand to work. It's very rewarding to do something and have that thing produce for you. So over the years, by the way, I started off with planting corn every year because I only wanted to plant corn. I loved corn. Right?
That's funny.
Yeah. But then as I grew, I said, okay, well, you've got to diversify now. Yeah, so I moved from corn into planting root vegetables as well as that yucca that I'm talking about, but also like eggplant. In Trinidad, we call it melangen. I planted watermelon and pumpkins, and one of the things I loved was sugarcane. So I was always putting sugarcane back in the ground. That keeps coming back time after time. But that's where I fell in love with gardening. And for 19 years of my life in Trinidad, that's what I love to do. But then came the time that we had to say goodbye to Trinidad, and that's why I ended up in Canada. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was all new for me in Canada. New environment, new temperatures especially.
Yeah. Wow. Big difference.
Huge difference. Being back in the Caribbean, we pretty much had the same temperature range all year round. It never really got colder than maybe 21 degrees. Mm-hmm. And 21 degrees would be freezing in Trinidad. So we were able to plant the same type of crop pretty much throughout the major part of the year. We had certain things we'd plant in season, but there was nothing that we couldn't plant at any time. Coming to Canada, everything changed. Now I was dealing with winter and fall and spring and summer, which were new seasons to me apart from summer, because that's the only thing I had in the Caribbean.
And when you said 21, you're talking centigrade, right?
21 centigrade, okay. Yes. Yeah. So we were dealing with that. But one of my major disappointments after having moved to Canada is that we moved in the city, right? And we had a small backyard. And it was not a good headspace for me, because in the Caribbean, we had like 5 varieties of mangoes, and we had cherries and bananas and coconuts and plums and tangerines, all this sorts of stuff. We came to the city, and the house we moved into, there was nothing in the backyard. And I thought to myself, why isn't there anything in the backyard? As a boy, there was always stuff in my backyard. And I looked around me and realized that a lot of people didn't have any backyard gardens. Now, this was in Eastern Canada. This was in St. Catharines, Ontario. And I thought, how tragic. And the opinion that I gained is that, isn't Canada a place that people grow things? It's like... It didn't seem like anyone wanted to grow food in their backyard, Janine, and I couldn't understand why, right? And where I found food was on farms. And that's where the peaches and the nectarines and, the produce were. They were all on farms. Nobody grew them in their backyard. Oh, at least I didn't see it. That was my opinion, right? But I thought it can't be this way everywhere. And why isn't people taking advantage of using the small spaces that they had? Our backyard was probably about, maybe being in the city, about, let's say 25 feet by about 25 feet, right? So not very big. But I thought, something can still be produced here. But at that headspace I was in, I didn't really have the drive to do it.
So it sounds like moving from Trinidad, which is full of abundance, to a cold climate, kind of depressing?
It was a bit depressing. It took me a full year going through all the seasons before I really looked at it and said, this is where you live now. You've got to learn to adapt.
Got to make the most of it.
You have to make the most of it. Well, there I was in my yard, and I saw my mom. She went and she put her hands to work again, and she put peppers and corn and tomatoes, but a very small amount. But I still never got into it, right? And I lived in that environment, in that place for, I think it might have been, 10 years. Yeah, okay. 10 years. and didn't really do much. Then I moved to a different area and lived there a while, and now I was in an apartment and still didn't do much. But I moved to British Columbia in 2008.
Okay.
And my spark came back. Because now I was in an area with mountains and fresh water, and lake, and, beautiful sunlight and trees. And I saw again, wow, that boy, that was in the Caribbean. And I thought, you know what? It's time to get back to gardening. And although I moved in the city here in Nelson, British Columbia, it's a small city, but I saw opportunities that could be used to produce food again. Mm-hmm. That was important to get that part of me back. So when my wife and I were looking for a home, we thought we would like to get something that we can actually have a usable space to, again, grow something out of the ground. And what was really important at the time is that at the grocery store, we weren't getting the produce that we wanted. And I would say to anyone, that's ever bitten into a tomato and found that it really didn't taste like a tomato, that it's time
tastes like almost nothing.
Exactly. That it's time to start growing your own tomatoes. And if you have to grow it in a pot, if you live in an apartment and you've got a balcony, but you've got some sunlight, if you have to grow it in a pot, then grow it in a pot. Mm-hmm. If you have to grow it in a kitchen window with a planter box, grow it there. But you have to get back to the point where you're able to bite into a fruit or a vegetable and remember what it tastes like. And why I say this is because we had hamburgers one day, and my wife put tomatoes in the hamburger, mm-hmm. and I bit into the hamburger, and it was a good slice of tomato, and I could not taste the tomato.
Wow. Yeah, except in the summer, I don't really like to buy tomatoes.
Exactly.
It kind of tastes like nothing.
They taste like nothing. And I said to my wife, there's tomatoes in here, right? And she said, yep. And I looked at it, and the color turned me off. It did not look like a ripe fruit. Mm-hmm. It looked light orange, and inside was all not very rich in color. And I said to my wife, that's it. We're growing some tomatoes. And I started growing tomatoes. And the first time I bit into a homegrown tomato in Canada, oh, my eyes lit up. And I was like, wow, now that's a tomato, right? And yeah, I couldn't stop at that point, right? And now from growing, just simple things like tomatoes, and lettuce and kale, that's what we started with. Now we're growing a variety of food, and we've utilized a small space. A lot of people ask me, when I tell them what we grow, they said, oh, wow, you must be on a farm. You must have an acreage. Mm-hmm. And my answer is like, no, what makes you think that? And they say, well, you're growing all this stuff. And I said, yeah, but I'm growing them in small spaces, which is sometimes unimaginable to people that you can actually produce so much in small spaces. But when you make the space your own, then you can do something with it.
Well, with the way you've organized everything, it's an intensive way of gardening.
Yes.
And you actually use a lot less water, mm-hmm. and you can get a lot more into a small space if you do it properly.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite by other standards, it's a condensed area. But you'll see later on, we've got strawberries, we've got blueberries, we have grapes and peach tree and cherry trees and tomatoes growing on trellises. And, we have kale and pumpkins and cucumbers and carrots in pots. All this stuff, it can be done.
Absolutely.
It absolutely can be done. And what you have to do is, like, right now, if it's fall for you, just, look at your yard. and see what you would like to do with a space. Try to put your imagination on. And once you have a determination to do something, you should just go do it.
Absolutely. And the other thing you want to do is we were talking about when we're outside is watch the sun. Watch what areas get more sun, because some things need a lot more sun than other plants do.
Yeah, correct. You find you may have to do a little bit of research to figure out what your sun requirements is for what you're trying to grow. And do what I did. You go outside, you stand in the spot that you want to put something in, look at your watch and see where that sun is at that time, and track the sun throughout the day. And if you find that there's something that requires 6 hours of sunlight, like I have some fruit trees that require minimum 6 hours of sunlight. That's what I had to do. Track the sun to see where I could plant this tree to get that requirement. Other things like lettuce, they don't really like hot sun anyway.
No, they don't grow well.
Yeah, so you want to put that in an area that it would have, like mine is planted where it has morning sun. And as the afternoon comes and it gets quite hot, then they're in a shaded area. And we produce beautiful lettuce.
I'm sure it does well. And somebody may not have much sun, so then you grow part shade or shade plants.
Exactly.
Maybe you can't grow everything, but you can certainly grow some.
That's correct. There is no one that can't grow anything. We have people that we know, their soil is mostly clay soil, right? So that keeps them back from growing something. But I said to them one day, I said, what would be a really good idea is if you make some raised beds. You make some raised beds, put some landscaping fabric on the base, and you fill it in with soil. Then that becomes your planting space.
And that takes care of a lot of problems. It takes care of rocks. It takes care of just any kind of crappy soil. Yep. You can create exactly what you want.
Exactly.
Plus, for me, I really like my raised beds. I can sit on the edge and weed and work in the garden, and I'm not bending over so much anymore. It's much more convenient. The raised beds don't seem to get as many weeds as just, down on the ground. There's a lot of advantages. And you can create the perfect conditions.
Exactly.
Because some plants like a lower pH, some like a higher pH. Some need things need different nutrients, and it's a lot easier in raised beds, I think.
Exactly. And drainage matters a lot. That's one thing one should be mindful of when they're doing any sort of gardening. If your soil has more clay in it, then your drainage is going to be poorer, right?
Right.
If you are still determined to plant in a particular soil, I would check to see what the water content in the soil is. And if you have more clay, you might want to take some of that clay out and put some more topsoil, more loamy soil material or more sandy soil material and mix it all in, right? So you can get some of that water retention. You can reduce that.
And that's another thing to consider, to do some research on, is how do you want to water your garden? Is it small enough to hand water, or are you away a fair amount of time so you need drip irrigation, or do overhead watering? There's lots of different ways to get water to your garden.
Exactly.
But you need to plan that out.
Yeah. And you can do, for some, they don't want to get into the task of putting in-ground watering systems. Well, I bypass that, and I have an above ground watering system, and all it is, I have my hose on a timer, and then I just put above ground watering tubing, right, and it runs all through a particular part of my garden, and my timer comes on automatically. And it waters only for the amount of time I want it to water to. And for each plant, there's a different nozzle, a different sprayer on it. I might mist some, or I would have drip to others. But I make sure that I'm not using too much water for everything, right? I'm just giving them the water requirements that they need.
And it takes a little bit to set up, but it's really pretty easy. But then once you've got it, it's so nice during the summer. You don't have to worry about it. You know, whether you're there or not, things are getting watered. Yeah. If you're too busy and you just want to check every once in a while, make sure your system's not plugged up.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you have an above ground system, what keeps a lot of people back from putting in systems like these, because they always think, well, when winter comes, it's going to freeze up. My pipes are going to break, right? Well, there's something simple you do. I do it every fall. When fall comes along, I take my compressor.
I knew that's what you were saying.
And I blow out my water line every fall.
Then there's nothing to freeze.
There's nothing to freeze. So then you're all good again. The spring comes, you hook it back up to the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to water it in the fall, so you don't have to worry about that. You just blow the water out and you're good again for next year. I've been doing it now for 3 years. It's great. I've never broken a pipe.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's perfect. Because I know some people feel like they've got to take everything in. And, I think this is the first year in our gardens that we're just leaving everything out and making sure everything's drained.
Yeah, for sure. So, so there's ways around things. There's a lot of ways around things. And, if you use your imagination for a little bit, you'd probably find a way around it. And also utilize your farmer supply associates, talk to them because they have way more knowledge than you have, requirements for certain things, and talk to them.
Another thing is you might get some neighbors together and each person learn about a certain plant or a certain fruit or something and get together and share knowledge and help each other out. And, also I was going to say, you don't have to, a lot of things you can go to your nursery and get plants, especially if you don't have a huge garden. A lot of times it's easier. There are some things that I don't want to grow a lot of, so I just get a few plants, rather than getting seed packets.
Yes.
But I'd still get seed catalogs just because there's a lot of information, there's a lot of tips, and the seed catalogs have a lot of educational material in them too.
Yes.
And they're fun to look at anyway. It's fun in the winter.
Yeah, I learned a lot from seed catalogs myself, like on garlic, because I hadn't grown garlic before, and I depended on the catalog to actually put my first garlic clove in the ground, because I had no idea what I was doing. It definitely gave me some good advice on what to do and what to watch out for and stuff like that. So
seed catalogs have a lot of good information, and if you get on their email list, I have several that are always sending me information appropriate for the season. And,
yes,
it's really helpful.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. So we're going to go outside now and take a tour of the garden and get some tips. And we're going to come back in the spring, in the summer, and see what's happening. And if you have any questions, you can go to the blog for keepingitrealwithjanine.com and ask questions. And Troy or I will do our best to answer them for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll see you in the garden.
Okay. Ooh, look at the roses. Your roses are still beautiful.
They go until, as you see, October. Sometimes they go till the end of October.
Oh, awesome.
Over there's another bush, if you see it.
Oh, what kind is that?
That's my ketchup and mustard I was telling you.
Oh, that's gorgeous. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Troy, let's take a look at your blueberries. I noticed you're growing them in pots. I can't believe it. They're beautiful.
The fall is actually when the blueberries get red.
I know. They're so pretty. Now, when are you pruning your blueberries? In the fall or in the spring? In the spring.
Oh, two things. In the summer, after they stop fruiting, you can prune them back to the shape you want, right? So, for instance, this guy was all the way out here.
Right.
And I pruned it back here because I wanted it to be more upward and growing.
So Troy is pointing out a branch that was growing horizontal out a couple of feet, and he pruned it back so that some of the other branches could start growing up more.
Yes.
Because he wants to get a more vertical
growth
rather than horizontal.
Yeah, because it's going to follow the sunlight, right? So the sunlight is not directly overhead because of the cedar tree. And besides, the sun is passing more to the south. So I will do that in the summer to keep my shape. In the spring is where I'll do my pruning to cut the dieback. So whatever got affected by the winter, which every year you'll have branches that's affected by the winter.
Oh, absolutely.
You prune the dieback ones off in the spring. Yeah.
Okay, so shaping during the summer after fruiting.
Yeah.
And then in the spring, you prune off the dieback.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Good information. So anybody can have, I mean, really, a pot, a 2-foot diameter pot, you've got 4 plants in it. And I know from experience, you can get a lot of blueberries. The last couple of years, we've had so many blueberries that I've got a freezer full of blueberries.
Yeah.
But one thing I found out about freezing blueberries is that because freezing cracks the fiber in the berry, that you're actually getting more of the antioxidants than you are when they're fresh.
Really?
So, yeah.
Well, that's really good to know.
I know, because I thought, I'm not eating them fresh. It's not as good when they're frozen. But this is actually something where you get more of the nutrients when they're frozen.
And, of course, that's what you want to get out of your fruits. The more nutrients possible you can draw out of your fruits, the better it is for you.
Absolutely. And there's tons of ways to use blueberries in cooking. There's no end to the ways you can use them. So that's great.
So one way that I have, one thing that I have implemented rather to keep down on the amount of water usage is drip irrigation, right? So the strawberries, as you can see, in rows, and they've got a bed with landscape fabric over it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Each bed has 7 strawberry plants.
Okay, looks like a lot more than that.
Yeah, it does. But to each plant, there's a drip irrigator.
Oh, okay.
Right. So this works in twofold. One is because I have my landscaping fabric on the actual plant, I don't use as much water as, say, some other people would use because it doesn't dry out that much, right? The landscaping fabric will actually keep the soil moisture. So I don't need to use as much water as the average person would use had their blueberries been just on the soil. Because the
strawberries.
Strawberries.
Okay.
Yeah, because the sun's going to dry out the soil. But because it's under this fabric, the moisture is contained in the soil longer.
Now, how do you replace old plants? How often do you do that?
So I've learned that old strawberries, rather, should be, the turnover rate should be every 3 years.
3 years, okay.
Right? If you want to keep getting the maximum size of your strawberries. So because these are just planted in a hole here, every 3 years you just pull one out and you put another in. So I've got the runners. The runners are never able to plant themselves because of the landscape fabric, right? What I did with my bed, I've got 3 beds, and this is how I rotate them. There's a 1-year bed, 2-year bed, and a 3-year bed.
Got it.
So every year, I'll always have one bed that I need to change over, right? And that summer, I will take the runners, I'll put a pot right beside the bed, and I'll have a runner plant itself in a pot, right? That way, the next season comes, the spring, I'll take the pot out, pull the old one, strawberry out, and I'll put that new one in, right? And I'll call that my 0 year. Because it's not yet 1 year.
Right.
So then I'll have a 0, 1, and a 2 year.
Got it.
Right.
I'll have you know my brain is, because I have strawberries and I don't like what's happening to them and I need to do them differently. So my brain is racing right now. I'm thinking.
It's a good way.
Yeah, it is.
So that way you always make sure every 3 years you're turning over your strawberries. And every year you will still get strawberries because you have a 2 year and a 1 year.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
Neat. That's great. And so you've got 21 plants here in about 6 by 10?
21 plants. Let's see. We got 1, 2, 3. I'm just measuring.
He's marking out with his feet.
So 7 feet by about maybe 10 feet. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we've just discovered that some of the strawberries here are flowering.
Yeah.
It's October 22nd.
I know. I have the Albion everbearing, and I've got like strawberries that are between 1 and 2 inches still going on them.
Wow. Amazing.
If you want some Albion, I have lots of them. They're great. I can give you some.
That would be fantastic.
So one of the things that for a family that is thinking about having a garden is to sit down and talk about with the family. What is it everybody wants? What are your favorite fruits? What are your, because otherwise I find that my garden got out of hand and I decided, I'm just I don't have a lot of time and energy.
Yes. And
so I really want to grow what we're going to eat, like broccoli. We eat a lot of broccoli. Broccoli's easy. The side shoots just keep going all some. Mine are I'm still harvesting broccoli. Wow. We love strawberries. We love fruit. So we go heavy on the fruit. And I make marinara sauce. I make salsa. Yes. So, I need all the ingredients for all of that. But I'm kind of done experimenting. I just want what we're going to use, and there's the processing, and it all takes effort. But if the whole family pitches in, it's not that bad.
That's correct.
Does your son help out?
Our son, that's the good thing. He really likes gardening.
Oh, good for you.
He's always asking me, how do you do this and how do you do that?
Chip off the old block.
Hey, come outside. I'll show you exactly what to do.
Oh, that's great.
Right?
That's great.
Because when I grew up, I was watching my mom, and how she was gardening, and I took that on from her. So to have my offspring now liking garden, that's the best reward.
That's great, because it's something you can't. It's kind of hard to force, If somebody doesn't really want to be out in the garden, like my husband's not really a gardener, but he does because I need his help. He helps, but it's not like his passion. It's not his thing. No,
exactly. Yeah.
Okay, what was in this?
So this section is where I had my garlic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's your old garlic stalks.
Last year was the first time I planted garlic. And I did all the research that I can do. And I had this one area here, Janine, which is about 3 feet by 12 feet long. Mm-hmm. And I planted 170 cloves of garlic.
Wow. How far apart did you plant them? 3 inches?
3 to 4 inches for some, and 4 to 5 inches for the other varieties. Right? And I didn't guess on this. I actually went and looked up the varieties and see what their need of space was. But would you know that out of 170 cloves of garlic that I planted, I got 170 heads of garlic.
Wow.
Yeah, they all did very well.
Wow. So that close. Well. So I wasn't sure, because it's been so wet, about planting the garlic. So I called one of our neighbors, Bill Barasoff, because he used to grow 5,000 heads of garlic.
Oh, wow.
He had awards and the whole thing.
Yes.
And what he told me was 6 inches in either direction. Just, don't worry about having the rows wider and all that. He said, just do 6 inches. And he said, since we're in Canada, the Canadian Thanksgiving, which is Columbus Day in the States, to the end of the month, that's the best time to plant it. Because you do want a little bit of root to grow so the bulbs don't freeze.
Yes, correct.
But you don't want too much. You don't want green to start growing on top yet. Yeah. And he said that the best way to mulch was with hay, as opposed to straw. Because he said a lot of times with straw, you're going to get little seeds. And he said garlic does not like to be disturbed at all. So he suggested mulching for the winter with hay.
Well,
I like to use alfalfa myself, the leafy, the second cut. That will mulch in, a lot of that will mulch in nicely too and give nutrients.
So have you planted your garlic?
Yes, I did it. We did it last weekend. I got the family involved. They were all gung-ho, so I said, let's do it.
Yeah. I've just been waiting for the sky to turn off.
I know. Well, he said, because I called him last weekend and he said, no, do it right now. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get out and do it. So
well,
we
I guess
did it.
I better get going myself.
And with 4 of us, it didn't take very long at all. And I did a raised bed this year because the previous year I did in the ground, and we've got really crappy rock soil.
Yes.
The rocks just seem to kind of come up, you know? They just kind of appear all the time.
Yeah.
So Stephen's been building me raised beds, and I decided to do the garlic and raised bed this time.
Yeah.
So,
well, as you can see in my yard, I always joke about this. I either got rocks or I got roots. And if there's neither, it's because there's both. I've got rocks and roots that I've got to move, right?
Well,
so every time I put a shovel in the ground, I get a combination of rocks and roots.
And look what you have, because you've done raised beds, or I don't know, what would you call these beds now?
Well, they're not actually raised.
I know.
Because what's going on here is that there was a section of my yard that was all slanted down in the property line. And I did not like mowing on that slant at all. Anybody who mows...
It would kind of be dangerous, actually.
It would be dangerous.
Steep and narrow.
Yes, and it's not very good on your ankles.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted a garden, decided, maybe we should build a retaining wall, right? So we built a retaining wall on the downslope and brought it back to the level of the land, right? So it's actually leveled out. That's why we can't call it a raised bed.
Right. I'm not sure what
I'm not sure what we would call it. Let's just call it a retained garden bed.
It's brilliant because, it's just wasted space.
Yes.
And now, how much sun do you get here?
That's the thing. So because of the tall cedar trees on the south side, because all the sun passes to the south, right?
Right.
So we get sun in the morning, but from summertime, the sun will come up over that rise there on the east, right? And we'll get sun in this backyard from about maybe 5:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, I see. Okay, yep.
Because it comes up over there. So we get sun about 5:30, but then it disappears. Disappears somewhere around maybe 10:30-ish, right?
Okay.
And then we'll get a little glimmer of sun coming through the trees. So as you notice here, Janine, I don't have any fruit vegetables.
Right. So this is mostly early morning sun. So I see you've got kale.
Yep.
What was in here?
This is my herb garden.
Your herb garden?
Yeah. So we have the rosemaries and the oregano. And I usually plant things like thyme and all that kind of stuff that doesn't require a huge amount of sun.
Right.
Yeah. So that's here. As you pointed out, the kale. I've also planted my lettuce here. That doesn't need a huge amount of sun as well.
And it doesn't like to be hot.
Doesn't like
early
to be
morning
hot.
sun's perfect.
Yes. And down at the end of the line that gets sun for a little longer in the day, I've got cucumbers and squash that are actually able to grow back here.
That's great. Well, I think cucumbers don't like to get too hot either.
No,
so
they
the earlier east sun is better for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And you're growing all this, and you've still got now. How many acres is your little property? Because it's not that big.
No, we are only in about, I think, 0.34 of an acre, somewhere around there.
Okay, so about a third of an acre.
Yeah.
And he's still got, Troy, you've still got grass.
We've still got a beautiful lawn.
Yeah, you still got a nice lawn, and you're growing all of this food.
Mm-hmm.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
So what do we have over here?
Oh, so we've got a beautiful patio over here. We've got actually also a walkway beside the stream, a little footpath. And this was another area that had a slope section to the yard.
Oh, you got more strawberries here?
Yeah. Oh, strawberries, yeah.
Yep.
So we built another retaining wall here, right? And we put it hollowed out again. We put the soil in there, and we planted strawberries all the way down. Yeah. So down here, we go down to the footpath. And this is where we had another area of the yard which had a slope. And if you can picture this, it's running beside a stream. A stream is running beside this footpath.
Now, where does the water come from?
The water comes from up on the mountain, way high up, right? And it's way up in the mountain, probably about maybe 1,000 feet up, right? And this water just meanders all the way down.
It's probably good drinking water.
It's very good.
Our water comes from like 4,000 some feet, and that's our drinking water. It goes down into a creek and gets filtered through the sand. And
yes. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so this is beautiful water that runs through here.
Lovely.
Yeah. And decided to put like a footpath running, just meandering beside the stream here.
And I'm assuming you built these bridges.
Yes, I did. Japanese bridges.
They're beautiful.
Well,
and you built this deck, I assume.
Yeah, this patio here we built as well.
Now, how long has it taken you to do all of this?
Well, we did this in 3 years.
Wow.
Right. Every year, I like to be outside. So every year I find a new project to do. And I'm always adding to the yard, always adding projects. Like, for instance, this retaining wall. When you have obstacles in your way, sometimes you may not want to get them out of your way. Sometimes it may be difficult to get them out of your way. We're standing in front of this big boulder here. Oh. I tried to see if I can get to the bottom of this boulder, and I could not. So it ended up becoming a feature in my footpath, right?
Excellent.
So as you can see, we've got the stones just kind of curving a little S-snake type curve to it. And all that is because of this rock. Decided to make the path winding so it can get around this rock, and this rock actually became a feature. Then I just put 3 other rocks.
To kind of balance it?
To kind of balance it out. Because it's all about balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to point out for our listeners that you have a full-time job.
I do.
Yes.
Yes.
So, it's not like you're,
Yes. I'm a dental hygienist, and I work with my hands there too. So, working with my hands, of course, is something I love.
I can see that.
Yes. That brings us to this Japanese bridge.
Oh, it's beautiful.
The stream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can hear the water.
Yeah.
It's my favorite sound.
And here's another path that I extended this spring here. Because we had this pathway. It's made with slate stone and gravel. Right?
Nice.
And
do you have anything under it to prevent weeds from growing through, or just
no? We didn't have weeds, because you know what? I actually want some sort of greenery growing around it,
like maybe creeping thyme or something like that.
Exactly, because that accentuates the stone. Right?
And when you walk on it, it's
exactly
so nice.
It smells good.
Yeah.
And right now we're in what I call the forested area of my yard. It's trees. We've got maple trees, cedar trees. We've got a birch tree as well.
It's lovely. It's like a whole different world here.
It is.
You've created. It's like, what I really like is how you've created little vignettes around the outside.
Yes,
it's beautiful.
Correct. Yeah, when we have company over, everybody comes and they said, "Wow, you've got all these pockets of spaces around your yard. Every area there's like a little something. It's a little different." I think that's one of the joys of gardening. We came here, we moved into this property, and it was a blank slate. And we decided over time we were going to make it our own. Like right now, we're standing in front of a English stone patio. And before, this was a bit of a gravel pit. Just a half moon shape with a fire pit in the middle. And we saw this and thought, what a beautiful place to build a patio. It's running right beside a stream. You can sit on the patio and listen to the brook going by. So yeah, we created this space, and this is where we entertain most of the time in the summer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And you've got lots of shade.
Lots of shade.
It stays cool. I would think it would stay nice and cool here.
It is very nice and shaded. One of the things, being from Trinidad myself, most Trinidadians do not sit in the sun like North Americans do.
I don't sit in the sun, but I know what you mean. A lot of people.
We don't sit in the sun. We love sitting in the shade. And so the best thing was, we thought, to build a patio in the shade. You still get the warmth from the sun, but it's not beating down on your head. And what's also beautiful to note, that if it rains here, if it's just drizzling very slightly, you don't have to run for cover.
You've got a canopy.
Got a canopy.
A natural canopy. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very nice. Got your wood all stacked nicely.
Thank you. This woodshed we also put up here.
It's actually a very nice woodshed.
One thing I'm really wanting to do here, I want to turn this into another project because I want to add some Japanese elements to it that will actually go with the bridge. So I'm still in the thinking process. I don't like to rush through things, so I haven't done it yet. But it would be good if I could make this to look somewhat like a Japanese temple, with all the decorations and stuff.
I get it. I totally get it. Yeah,
it would be great. Yeah.
No, it's important. I think that's a good point that you just made. That it's really important to think things through.
Yes,
because you don't want to make a mistake. It's a lot of work, and you want it to look whatever your vision is, and so that's why this is really the time now, I think, to start thinking about your vision of what you want for your garden, your yard. Don't wait until the spring.
No.
You've got all these months during the winter to look at seed catalogs, find out where you get soil, where you get manure, compost, where you get building materials, finding help if you need help. Hopefully some friends who are talented can help you. And, to get all that organized, because you don't want to do it at the last minute. So this is really the perfect time to start thinking about it.
Yeah, you're right, Janine. Fall is a perfect time. And what I would encourage our listeners to do today, too, is walk around their yard. Go outside, walk around. If you have to sit down and just look. Just observe and see what you can invent, what you can create that would fit into the space you have. One of the important things for us was to have our yard looking as natural as possible. So we decided that we were going to use elements that were already in our yard, like cedar, for instance. We've got a lot of cedar trees, and if we keep walking down this path, you see one of the examples. We decided we wanted to put up a swing bench and needed to build a platform for it to level it because the ground was sloping down. So what we did is utilize some cedar logs.
Oh my goodness, this is beautiful.
We made a square platform, more like rectangular platform, with these beautiful cedar logs we cut right down the middle in half. And this stairs that you're looking in front of you is from a cedar, a big log. We just hewn it out right from the log itself. Now we've got this beautiful cedar. It's all clear coated, so it's nice and glistening and shiny with that rich cedar look.
It's beautiful.
And it accentuates your surroundings, right?
What a way to be creative. I mean, really, for someone, especially someone who has to work inside all day, maybe in an office. And, I think everyone has a creative side that needs to be expressed to really feel fulfilled. And, like for me right now, it's more... I'm doing my garden, but more for me right now is my harp and playing my harp and learning how to get better and better at it so I can be a good harpist. And, but we all need something creative. And, even if you're in an apartment with a balcony, you can still be creative. You can still grow things. You can still have a 2-foot pot of blueberry bushes if you really, really love blueberries,
Blueberries in the balcony.
There are a lot of things you can do. And it's so rewarding to create. There's so many ways to be creative and to create. And this is one way you get to eat the food and, you get to sit on the bench and it's really rewarding.
Yeah. What a great way to enjoy a space. To come outside and sit on a bench, a swinging bench, listen to a stream, just rumbling by. In the springtime, the stream is even louder. You can sit here and read a book.
Oh, and if you've had a tough day, you come home and take 15, even if it's just 15 minutes, take some time out, maybe make yourself a cup of tea and sit outside and just listen. Even though you've got traffic, you still got the water sound.
And the beautiful part of it is that it's your creation. When people come and said, "Oh, wow, look at that. Who did you guys get to do that?" You say, "We did it."
Yeah.
And then they go, "What?" You said, "No, we did it."
And you can too.
Yeah, you can too, exactly.
Somebody might not have all the skills that you have. You're obviously multi-talented. So people might need a little bit of help, but be amazed what you can learn to do that you don't already know how to do.
You start off small.
Yep.
Start off small. Yeah.
This is beautiful. Now, are those some fruit trees at the?
Yeah.
Let's see. That's the front. Okay.
Yeah.
As I was going to say at the back, but that's the front.
That's the front. Another thing I did this year was experiment with the sun, how much sunlight we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought one tree I really wanted to get is a pear tree, a Bosque pear. It's my favorite pear. And I looked all around the yard and I said, there's no way that has full sun. I can't grow Bosque pears, right? And I decided I wasn't going to give up. So I went online and I punched in Bosque pear trees and I read and read and read. And there it said, as long as you have about 6 hours of sunlight, you can grow Bosque pears, right?
Now, that particular pear or pears in general?
Pears in general.
Okay, 6 hours of sun are what you need.
6 hours of sun. Now, particular to Bosque pears, you can grow them in partial shade, right? Which I didn't know before.
I didn't know that either.
No. And I have partial shade here because where it is, it gets a little morning sun, but it gets a lot of afternoon sun, right? The other thing I realized is that I can grow even more than Bosque pears. I can grow plums and apples with my partial sun.
So how many hours do plums and apples need?
The plums and apples need, I think I read that, and it was said about 8 hours of sun.
Okay,
right?
so a little more than pears.
A little more than pears. Okay. But there's a Japanese plum that I put in this year. It's about a 2-year-old tree, I think it is, right? And I got 7 Japanese plums from it this year.
For 2 years? Wow, that's
and
very nice.
They were all ripe. They all ripened on the tree, and they all taste delicious, right?
Now, what do you use for fertilizer for your fruit? Let's start with the fruit. What do you use for your fruit?
So
we will be talking about more of this in the spring, but so people can get an idea.
So I use your typical fruit spikes. You can get them at your local farmer supply store. Sometimes you have them at other nurseries and stuff. And these spikes you just pound into the ground and you put it around the tree, not closer than 2 feet of the tree.
Okay.
Yeah. And you put it around what you call the drip line, right?
And why don't you explain what the drip line is?
Okay.
I know what it is.
So the drip line is where you have the branches come out and you have the leaves, and the water will drop off the edge of the leaves, right? That's how far the branches stretch out.
So as the tree gets bigger, the drip line gets
further and further away. So I use those spikes, and typically you would put spikes in the ground in spring, right? When the tree is just starting to get its buds, because you want to give it a good boost of fertilizer. Don't ask me what's in it, because I don't know the combination of it. All I know it's the fruit spikes.
Okay.
Next, you want to put it sometime in the summer as well, because you want to give them 2 boosts of fertilizer. One to help the tree come out of its dormancy and get its nice blooms and its blossom, and the other time you want it to get all that fertilizer to the fruit. Right?
And that sounds pretty easy to do.
It's very easy.
And it's constantly releasing nutrients.
Exactly, because it's a slow release, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you water the tree, like my tree, we've got young trees. I've got pears and plums and apples, but they're all young trees. So anytime I water the tree, that nutrients will get down into the soil, into the roots. Yes.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah. And the thing is, what I should point out, my trees are actually planted 6 feet apart.
Which is pretty close.
Very close.
Once again.
It's
close. Not 3 feet, but it's 6 feet. Still pretty close.
Because I'm going to espalier those as well. Right? Okay. So at 6 feet apart, I'm only growing my branches to maximum 3 feet long. Right?
So let's walk up here so we can take a picture of it, because you've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Is it 6 or 7 trees, I think?
Oh, no, there's one behind. So 7, you've got 7 fruit trees in really a very small space.
Yes, I think it's...
I'm going to walk under this beautiful trellis that I imagine you made.
I did build this, and again, it's built of cedar wood. Yeah. My house is also cedar vertical siding, right?
It's very nice. It's very pretty.
So I guess you'd say we're everything cedar in this yard. So from our right to our left, Janine, we've got Bosque pear, right? Then we've got batwood pear. And the reason I have two pear trees is because they need each other to pollinate.
And they don't have to be of the same variety?
They don't have to be of the same variety.
Okay.
Bosque and Bartlett, they will pollinate each other.
Okay.
Next, I have a Honeycrisp apple.
My favorite.
Yes, one of my personal favorite. And I have an Ambrosia apple. Right? The Ambrosia and the Honeycrisp, they will pollinate each other as well. In the middle, we have an early Italian plum. Now, that's partially self-pollinating. Partially self-pollinating means that it will pollinate itself, but you will not get as much fruit as if it had a partner. Right? But Italian plums are very fruitful. Very fruitful. If you have an Italian plum tree, you probably don't know what to do with all the plums.
I raise my hand on that one, yes.
Yes. So that's why I only have one of them. Right? Next, we have a Santa Rosa. That's the Japanese plum that gave me 7 plums this year. Beside it, we've got a Red Heart, another Japanese plum. And they will pollinate each other as well.
Okay.
So what happened, when I went to get one tree, I ran into the issue that I needed another tree to pollinate with it. That's why I ended up with 7 fruit trees, 6 feet apart.
You know, I'm surprised you don't have an Asian pear.
Yeah, I don't have an Asian pear. No.
The one thing I really like about Asian pears is they keep for a long time.
This is
they
what
keep,
I heard.
I think last year we had them through February.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long
This year we didn't get many Asian pears, but last year I had a lot. And yeah, they lasted for a long time. I love slicing up Asian pears and putting them in salad in the winter. Yeah, it's really nice.
That is very delicious.
Nice and crunchy. And
oh, I love the crunch. I think that's the favorite part of my food.
I think you need an Asian pear in here somewhere.
I love the crunch.
This is amazing. It really is. I can't believe you've done all this in 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
And working full time.
But it can be done.
It can be,
You have to have the desire to do it, though. Yeah, that's the thing. But again, if you set your mind to it and you look around your yard, you'd realize that you could turn a space that you thought, there's nothing I can do with that, to something beautiful. So yeah, just like I was alluding to a moment ago, if you just sit down and you think about it, you realize that you might have a portion of your yard that you don't quite know what to do with. But sit down, think about it, and that inspiration eventually will come to you.
If you let it simmer, a lot of times stuff will come to me as I'm falling asleep.
Yes.
I don't like to jump out of bed in the morning because if I kind of stay in that sort of half sleep, half awake state, I get a lot of ideas. Yes. A lot of stuff comes to me. And in the shower.
Yes.
I mean, that's where I got the idea to do this podcast was in the shower. A lot of things come to me in the shower.
We are today.
And here we are, right. So, yeah, let things simmer.
Yes.
Give it time. You'll be surprised. You'll see something when you're driving somewhere or you go to somebody's house or you're out and about and you'll see something and it'll give you an idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's what gardening's about. Ideas, yeah. And you can always change things. I mean, the infrastructure, not so easy to change, but the plantings and rotating, do you rotate? Yes. It's very important to rotate because whatever you plant is going to leach certain nutrients from other soils. So you don't want to plant the same thing there year after year after year because eventually what you're going to notice is your produce becoming smaller and smaller and your plants may not grow as well. So that's a key to tell you, hey, I'm taking a lot out of the soil. If you put something else back there, you'd realize that plant actually gives something to the soil that your other plant was taken out. So it's all about rotating your crops. So my policy is not to plant something except tomatoes. They seem to like the same place. Yes. But 3 years, do a 3-year rotation. What do you use? I would say the same thing. Okay. Yeah, 3-year rotation. I heard some people saying every year. I don't think personally it's necessary. I would say one thing, if you plant something in a spot 1 year and you notice, man, it was not as healthy as it was the year before. Didn't do that great. Time to rotate. Yeah, time to rotate. And I agree with you with the tomatoes. I've planted my tomatoes in the same spot for 3 years. every year it does beautifully. So I'm not about to move it.
I know. Don't change it. Yeah, they do seem to like the same
Yes,
place.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been excellent. And we're planning on touching base again in the spring and seeing what Troy's up to with his garden and what his plans are and what he's planting. The winter is a great time to plan. It's a great time to look at seed catalogs. Personally, I like Johnny's seed and Seed Savers Exchange. Seed Savers Exchange is all organic, open pollinated. Oh, that's another thing. If you want to learn how to save seeds, you want to get open pollinated seeds rather than hybrid, because hybrid will revert to whatever the original components were. You don't save seeds from hybrid plants. Although sometimes I get hybrid just because they're great,
Yes.
and I really like that particular variety, especially like cherry tomatoes.
You touched something there. I was just going to say cherry tomatoes.
Yeah, get the hybrid.
Yes.
But for most things, it's pretty easy to save seeds. What seed catalogs do you like to use?
I've been using West Coast seeds.
West Coast, yeah.
Yeah, West Coast seeds.
No, that's for, I was speaking for U.S. So West Coast, I use West Coast too for Canada.
Yes, for Canada. That's correct. Yeah. And West Coast seeds, I've been getting some pretty good results from West Coast seeds. And I would say to anyone, if you're getting pretty good results using a certain product, there's no reason why you should change that product.
Right.
Unless you want to experiment, of course, and see what somebody else has to offer.
I use William Dam too up here.
Yeah.
But for the States, my favorites are Johnny's and Seed Savers Exchange.
Yes.
Seed Savers Exchange has lots of heritage varieties. Individuals save seeds for them, and they've got really, really old varieties from Europe and from all over the world. So it's a neat place to get some really nice heritage.
Oh, I have to look into that.
I think we're going to stop for now, and I really, really appreciate your time and your knowledge and just who you are. It's been delightful.
Oh, thanks for having me. Anytime you can come back, and we'll open up the yard for you.
That's great. Thank you, Troy. Okay, great. Thank you.
That's the end of our show. Thanks for listening. There were a lot of good ideas that you can apply to your life right now. Hope you took some notes and will take action. Keeping It Real comes out every 2 weeks, so be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher so you don't miss a beat. You can listen or download episodes from our website, realjanine.com. Email at realjanine@gmail.com or tweet at realjanine. If you use Facebook, go to Real Janine and leave comments there. And you will get notices of new episodes if you follow. And remember, Janine is spelled Janeean.